Hello, everyone. We are Group Step 7. My name is Zarina Denise Flores Panday. We begin this report by defining again the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, or the CLUP. The CLUP refers to the document formulated by the local government in consultation with its stakeholders that defines or provides guidelines on the allocation, utilization, development, and management of all lands within a given territory or jurisdiction according to the inherent qualities of the land itself and supportive economic, demographic, sociocultural, and environmental objectives. There are 12 steps in creating the CLUP. The previous groups have discussed the first few steps. These were Step 1, Organize, Step 2, Identify stakeholders, Step 3, Set the vision, Step 4, Analyze the situation, Step 5, Set the goals and objectives, Step 6, Establish development trust and spatial strategies, and we are reporting the Step 7, which is prepare the land use plan. What is land use plan? Land use plan is the rational approach of allocating available land resources as equitably as possible among competing user groups and for different functions consistent with the development plan of the area and the program under the Republic Act No. 7279. The Step 7 translates the vision, goals and objectives, development thrust, and spatial strategies into land use plan. There are 4 sub-steps within the Step 7. These 4 steps are the following. Step 1. Determine land requirements and supply. Step 2. Design the basic land use scheme. Step 3. Formulate the policies that will govern the specific land and water uses. Step 4. Identify the key strategic programs and projects to support the implementation of the land use plan. These 4 steps have outputs. For Step 1, the outputs are total sectoral land requirement and strategies for addressing land requirements. For Step 2, the outputs are the proposed land use map, tabulation of existing and proposed uses, proposed network of major and secondary roads. For Step 3, the outputs are land and water use policies. And for Step 4, the outputs are general listing of consolidated programs and projects. The Comprehensive Land Use Plan, or CLUP, leans towards physical planning. It expresses the social values and the economic values that guide the physical development of the city or municipality. At this stage in the planning process, the development thrust and spatial strategies will be translated into a land use plan that will describe how, why, when, and where to build, rebuild, and preserve. In allocating and detailing of land uses, the land use plan integrates the mandatory elements, such as the transportation network, the public facilities, economic development, ecologically critical areas, and natural hazards. Land use conflicts are reconciled and adjustments in the whole matrix of relationships are made. The land use plan specifies the features of the preferred development thrust and spatial strategies, guided by the details and policies governing the following: the growth centers and corridors, residential developments and basic facilities or services, ecological system and cultural heritage protection or conservation, economic development and local governance, infrastructure support systems, development intent, and use of city or municipal waters. The following are the two objectives of the Step 7. Objective 1. Translate the vision, development thrust, and spatial strategies into land use plan that describes physically and spatially what, why, where, and when, and how a local government unit's land and water resources are allocated within its territorial jurisdiction, upland, lowland, and coastal. Objective 2. Identify the local government unit's land resources and water resources that shall be under the protection and production use, infrastructure, urban and other development uses consistent with and complementary to the CLUP's vision, development goals, and objectives.
Hi, my name is Sheila Marie Flores, and I will continue the report of Step 7. What are the key inputs of the Step 7? When we say key inputs, these are the things needed to create the output. The key inputs of Step 7 are outputs from Step 2, Step 3, Step 4, Step 5, Step 6, such as maps, sectoral studies, other thematic or special area studies. Expected outputs of the Step 7. The main expected output of the Step 7 is the land use plan, which has the following. Number 1, proposed land and water uses. Number 2, land and water use policies essential in physical development. Number 3, proposed circulation network. Number 4, major programs or projects. Who are the key technical actors or responsible bodies of the Step 7? The lead is the City or Municipal Planning and Development Office or CMPDO. The contributors are the technical working groups or TWGs from national government agencies or NGA, local regional field units, other critical local private, non government organizations or civil society organizations, community, academic, or research institutions or agencies. The decision making authority is the local chief executive, the Sangguniang Bayan, and the consultative body are the Local Development Council or LDC and local communities or barangays.
Hello, everyone. This is Zarina Denise Flores Panday, and I will continue the report. The steps of Step 7 put into detail the development areas as reflected in the structure or concept plan, which in turn is the interpretation of the preferred spatial strategies. Step 7.1, or the first step within the Step 7. The first step is to determine the land requirements and supply. Review and match the lands available for development, or the supply, and the quantified land requirements, or the demand, which are derived from the conduct of sectoral studies, current and projected population, vision and development thrust, and market analysis. All related sectoral or thematic and development plans prepared by the local government unit or national agencies shall be integrated into the CLUP, such as the Forest Land Use Plan, Tourism Master Plan, Ancestral Domain Sustainable Development and Protection Plan, Coastal Resources Management Plan, Protected Area Management Plan, Solid Waste Management Plan, and Agriculture Development Plan. These sectoral or thematic plans should complement and contribute to the attainment of the strategic objectives of the CLUP. Land use management and zoning arrangements of these sectoral or thematic plans should be consistent and made compatible with the designated local land use and zoning arrangements of the LGU. The figure here, figure 7-1, called Balancing Land Supply and Demand, illustrates the details of this activity. On the left side are the land demand, and on the right side are the land supply. It is determined whether these are matched. If yes, they are matched, and the land is adequate, go to 7.1.1. If the supply is adequate for the quantified needs and requirements, determine if modifications or adjustments are necessary. Adjustments may be in the form of additional expansion areas or growth areas, allocation policies that would ensure the progressive realization of the city's or municipality's development vision. If no, they are not matched and the land is inadequate, go to 7.1.2. If the supply is inadequate, less than the demand, identify strategic interventions to ensure the provision or availability of land to address space or land requirements. The following are some suggested strategic interventions: increase in use density, or densification or intensification, that is, infilling of vacant lots, vertical or high rise development, or redevelopment. Reclamation, subject to environmental and other laws and regulations. Possible conversion of developmentally constrained areas with the least perceived negative impact and subject to appropriate mitigating measures. If the demand is lower, go to 7.1.3. If the demand is lower than the supply, the planner or planners may decide on the appropriate use or uses of the remaining land supply to ensure the achievement of the development thrust. The following may be considered as may be appropriate for the local government unit: reversion of lands zoned as urban uses to agricultural uses to ensure and enhance food security. Identification of new growth nodes or corridors. Improvement of rural services and amenities. Possible relocation or socialized housing sites for informal settlers or families, if any, and for families which may be affected by pipeline projects and renewal or redevelopment programs in the urban areas. Other relevant uses subject to existing laws.
Hello everyone, I am Rhea P. Valenzuela Bohol. I will continue the report of Step 7.2, Design the Basic Land Use Scheme. 7.2.1, Translate and map the land use requirements and land use policy areas generated in the structure/concept plan into land use categories. 7.2.2, make a schematic diagram of the location and area of the identified land use categories on the base map. Make sure that the following land use areas and zones are clearly defined and marked in the base map. The map produced in this activity should serve as the draft proposed land use. Aside from studies and steps 2 to 6, the scheme should take into account the following. First, proposed transport layout. It includes main roads and network of secondary roads. Next, public sentiment on land use issues, followed by land values, then cost considerations, then aesthetic factors, then location criteria/standards. Refer to Volume 2 for the sector standards and location criteria. Location standards will normally vary from one use to another and from one planning area to another. Local planners should be aware that the standards are not absolute but are more in the nature of guides or criteria to be followed under normal circumstances. Then, convenience standards. Location of land use is determined by considering time and distance as the primary units of measurement. And performance standards. The main determinants of land use areas are health, safety, and amenity. New space needs can be accommodated in three ways. First is the use of vacant areas and urbanizable lands. Two is reuse of areas slated for clearance, and the last, invasion or change in use of existing built-up areas from one use to another use.
Hi, good morning. My name is Joshua Nakake and I will continue the report on line 7.2.3. Overlay the land of use scheme with the land supply map to see the extent of new areas for urban development and for judgment and revision where necessary. 7.2.4 Delineate the transportation network and propose circulation pattern. In this activity, achievement of the following must be considered. Number one is efficient internal and external leakage. Number two is to improve community access to basic social services and facilities or infrastructure. For number three is to stimulate development in identified development areas or growth nodes. And then lastly, and the desired impact of a service provision and influence of development patterns of the LGU. Land uses and transport are directly interrelated. Land provides the platform for the almost all kinds of human activities, while transport provide a connection between this land. The origins and destination of vehicle strips or transport are different locations where human activities take place. A plan for the network of collector roads, particularly for the planned urban expansion areas, will facilitate access to the land unserved by road and thus make more efficient use of land resources. If the land use plans prescribe that a certain area of the city or municipality should be industrial, for example, a plan showing road that will provide access to the area will facilitate the realization of the proposal. The network of collector roads should consist of roads that are properly spaced. Walkable distance must be observed. Example, the longest distance a person need to walk to reach a collector road, which logically in a public transport road should ideally be a maximum of 250 meters. The road right of way should follow DPWH standards.
7.2.5 Quantify the proposed land uses. Tabulate and quantify the proposed land uses following Table 7-1. It shall also include the proposed uses of water bodies within the jurisdiction of the city or municipality. The Table 7-1 is the existing and proposed land uses and color codes. This has the following: land use category, subcategories, existing land as measured in hectares, proposed land as measured in hectares, and the equivalent increase or the decrease. In symbology, the code, and RGB or red, green, or blue.
Hi, this is Mary Jane Batok and I will report step 7.2.6. Finalize the land use plan by making adjustments and or revisions where necessary. This process is a critical stakeholder engagement and negotiation process that must be carefully handled and facilitated. These adjustments and or revisions are made in any of the following areas: conflict between land use and transportation, possible conflicts between location and magnitude of land use and existing or proposed transportation lines should be ironed out. Proposed land uses should be located as much as possible in areas which are served or to be served by transportation lines or in areas where transportation lines can be feasibly extended. Where locating uses in certain areas become the greater imperative, the transportation plan should be adjusted or revised accordingly. Areas with heavy densities, in some cases heavy daytime densities, such as CBDs, industrial areas, and school zones, should be served by adequate transportation routes and facilities such as parking areas, service centers, etc. Conflict between land uses may be possible in two ways: compatibility or incompatibility between land use. These shall be evaluated in such terms as possible nuisance or noise, smoke, fumes, glares, etc. from one use to other adjacent areas. Incompatibility in terms of aesthetic considerations. Traffic generations where one area is exposed to heavy traffic generated by another use or where adjacent uses, for example, commercial and industrial areas, generate undesirable traffic levels. Citing of land uses, evaluated according to whether a particular area is allocated for the most suitable use in terms of land value, land suitability, cost revenue considerations, for example, viable commercial housing in proposed residential area, and exploitation of locations with good aesthetic qualities. The feasibility of extending the transportation and utilities, water, power, storage, communication lines to a new location. Adjustment for space allocation. Tentative allocations for space requirements may need to be adjusted in terms of reduction or expansion of areas. Adjustments may be done as follows. In case where there is not enough land to accommodate all estimated space requirements, the proposed area of some uses may be reduced but with corresponding increase in density to satisfy the requirements. Tentative allocation may be increased to introduce flexibility in some uses, such as allowances for unforeseen spaces need or set aside areas with good potential as industrial land reserves. The final land use plan that would emerge from the foregoing adjustments and revision should as much as possible be the most balanced and harmonious land use design in terms of area, location, and layout. Use the standard color codes in delineating the proposed land uses as presented in Table 7-1. Refer also to HLURB guides to data management for CLUP or CLAP preparation to facilitate the mapping activities. The proposed land use map will reflect the resultant land use proposal for the entire city or municipality, including coastal and marine areas. For purposes of having a more detailed presentation, the urban core and other urbanizing areas may be enlarged to bigger scale to show the detailed land uses within. The components of urban areas must be clearly specified and explicitly presented to avoid subjectivity of interpretation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Benjamin F. Osier Jr., and I will continue the report of Step 7, 7.3. Formulate the policies that will govern the specific land and water uses in the entire city/municipality. This shall serve as inputs in the formulation of development control and zoning arrangements for each land use management zone category and subcategories. Similarly, Indigenous Knowledge Systems and Practices, IKSP, that can be adopted to ensure sustainable use of special areas, that is, ancestral domains, should be identified and integrated into the proposed development controls and zoning arrangements. A policy refers to a statement indicating specific guidelines, methods, procedures, rules, and forms that will guide all development activities in the city or municipality to support and further encourage actions toward the achievement of the vision, goals, objectives, and targets. Policy statements may cover any or all of the following concerns: strategic functions of identified growth areas/corridors, extent of area to be occupied and types of future commercial and industrial activities, intensity of activities to be generated, visual impact regulations, special assessment, compensation, and tax incentives and disincentives to be affected in the implementation of the plan, conservation, preservation, maintenance, and development of ecological system, that is coastal, forest, lakes, etc., cultural heritage sites, natural resources, and the like, climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction land use policies, and other policies considered by the locality as necessary and relevant to the local land development plan. Policies are formulated through workshops or brainstorming sessions by the planning team, the results of which are to be presented to other stakeholders. This activity may also result to further refinement of sectoral policies for the purpose of consistency with the defined vision, goals, and objectives. Workshop on land use policies. The workshop activities shall include the following: Review of the vision, goals and objectives and the findings of the situation analysis on issues, problems, and the recommended interventions. Assessment of land use relationships, compatibility and linkages between land uses, intra-area compatibility. Identification of policies that respond to specific situations in order to attain the vision, goals, and objectives. At this stage, due consideration and consistency with the general policies stipulated in higher plans, such as the Provincial Physical Framework Plan, Regional Physical Framework Plan, or National Physical Framework Plan on production, protection, settlements, and infrastructure areas shall be observed, checking the consistency of policies with the issues, goals, and objectives. Guide questions are as follows. Does each policy address the cause of the priority problems identified in the situation analysis? Are the policies consistent with the stated vision, goals, and objectives and with each other? Are the policies consistent with national, regional, and provincial development policies and plans? What actions will these policies require? Is there a need for executive and legislative action? Consolidating the identified policies for the functional development areas according to sectors, and for the subsequent identification of responsibility centers.
Hello everyone, my name is Patricia Nathalie Kate P. Santos and I will continue the report of Step 7. 7.4. Identify key strategic programs and projects that will support the implementation of the land use plan. It is critical that the identification of development project and program must be directly linked to the provision or delivery of the necessary output to achieve the CLUP outcome indicators formulated in Step 7. So the major implementation mechanism of any approved CLUP is through its approved zoning ordinance and local development plan, or the Comprehensive Development Plan and Local Development Investment Plan. The CDP or the LDP provides a concrete identification of programs and projects that the LGU will implement and, more importantly, budget in a definite time period, like it's normally 3 years to coincide with the terms of office of LGU officials or executives. So the zoning ordinance serves as the specific policy instrument that implements the strategic thrust and objective of the approved CLUP. The detailed discussion of the integrated zoning ordinance is presented in the Step 8 and Volume 3 in the Model Zoning Ordinance Guidebook. So next, we have the 7.4.1 that determine the relevant programs and the project that arise from structure, concept plan, the detailed land use plan, and the identified policy. The following are some examples. First, we have the additional linkages in terms of circulation system. Second, we have the socialized housing. Next, we have the parks and playgrounds and greening project. Next, we have the waste management system such as sanitary landfills. Next, we have the renewal or redevelopment program. Next, we have the cultural and heritage conservation program. Next, we have the upgrading of sanitation and drainage system. Next, we have the irrigation project. Next, we have reforestation project. And lastly, we have the climate change and disaster risk adaptation and mitigation program and projects. Next, we have the 7.4.2 review and identify the key list of programs and projects resulting from the sectoral studies and sectoral thematic plans of national government agencies that are consistent and contributory to the objective and goals of the CLUP. So this will provide the basis for prioritizing projects, programs for implementation by the city or the municipality. The identified key outcome and result indicators in the CLUP shall serve as the main parameters for the prioritization of all the projects and programs coming from both local and national sectoral development and implementation plans.
This has been Step 7 Group. Thank you for listening.